本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's November 4th. It's Mina's birthday, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 520. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Ricardo Contreras.
Happy birthday, Mina!
She did it. She turned 3, despite her best efforts. Routine eating of suspicious substances that don't agree with her. She is still here. She's still fluffy. Also still here. Also still fluffy. Patrick Klepek.
How do you determine the birthday? Is it true birth or adopted birth?
No, this is the true birth.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is we did not get Mina for some time after.
But you know the actual birth date.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
we
yes.
don't know Pixels. That Pixels is just when we adopted her, and that became her birthday.
And of course, we also have Renata Price.
Howdy.
So,
all right. Before we get there, at the
Yeah.
beginning of last podcast, Rob, I don't know if you know this, but we're trying to, I wasn't sure what you were doing on Monday, so I told people you were canceled, and then I asked if a couple people could write in with their theories on what happened to you.
I was wondering about these emails.
I was waiting for you
Wow,
to
people
ask, like,
actually-
hey, by the way, is this a bit we need to pick up on? No, nothing. He just lets these canceled emails fly through. But, a couple of people wrote in, like, what happened to Rob? This is from Charles. I guess Rob would get canceled for tweeting the modern equivalent of, quote, let them eat cake. Thanks for all y'all do. I can see it.
Yeah,
I can see it.
that.
I can see it.
Wow.
Hey, point. Best guess, 3 words. Heated audiophile moment. FCGH. Jake. That's good. I also that
Yeah. Getting into it over
FCGH
some
is good.
speakers. Absolutely.
At 100%. 100%. I figure that Rob is most likely to be canceled when it's revealed he's actually been using Bluetooth earbuds this whole time.
Oh, canceled by the audiophiles.
Alex.
From
Yeah.
the other. Okay, yeah. I like that.
Never. Will never happen.
No, if you keep saying it, then you're just digging yourself a deeper hole.
There's one thing I can guarantee, and that it will be that I will never be caught using Bluetooth earbuds.
Oh my God! When we were on set, and you had like all, maybe I can just put in these earpieces for when he was trying to listen to a game, and I was like, oh, you got some wireless earbuds? He's like, they're earbuds, but they also have a wire. Just like truly deranged shit. Like you're like the only person that would be walking around in 2022 with earbuds with a wire dangling out of them.
I don't think that's true. I think there's tons of people who still support that, the 3.5 millimeter jack, and that still enjoy the plethora of options you have.
Plethora, is that what we're calling? Do you know what that word means? How many is a plethora?
Lots, many, myriad, tons. There's tons of great wired earbuds out there, and people should avail themselves of that market. Speaking of people availing themselves of the market, or maybe choosing not to, I guess time will tell. Patrick, we have some details about what the old PlayStation VR 2 is going to cost. What the little value proposition is there.
The Sony has announced, they've been talking about the PSVR 2 has been kind of interesting because normally how video game announcements tend to go are, okay, here's the splashy thing we're doing. Even frequently with hardware, here's a release date, here are games coming for it, and it's all kind of announced at once. With the PSVR, they've been basically just like occasionally publishing a blog that feels like they forgot. Like, oh, did we schedule that? Oh, okay. All right. I guess that went up today. Forgot that article that I wrote announcing that the PSVR 2 is going to be $549.99, which is the price for the PSVR 2, which puts it at higher than I don't know how this all works out with the current PS5 price increase pricing. I guess in theory that could put it in parity with the pricing of the console. Depending on your region and also how your currency is doing, because things like that are all out of whack at the moment. But it's expensive. It's about in line with what I expected, though, frankly. the PSVR 2 is being pitched as something in between a Quest and a Index, and the Index is something that's Valve's headset, at least when it first came out a couple years back. That's roughly $1,000, and the Quest is a couple $100. I forget where it's landed now with Meta's price increase, but let's just say $300. This landing at $550 is a big sticker shock, especially because, at least as far as I was reading, it doesn't come with any sort of PC support, which I think would have been like a real incentive for a lot of people to be interested in the platform. It's like, hey, cool, like here is a high quality consumer level VR headset, and also if I don't want to always have it connected to my PS5, there's like thousands of homebrew and other cool shit happening in VR.
That's all very true, but Patrick, am I also seeing this right? That is the PSVR 2 going to have like the highest pixel density per display?
It's a really good headset. Is like everything I've heard behind the scenes is that it is the most comfortable headset. For the price, it is like knocking it out of the park. Like if you've been waiting to get in on a headset, like this is a really good one. But man, that lack of PC support like really sucks. Because on one hand, I've remained excited as someone that broadly likes VR, even if I don't think it'll ever really reach mainstream penetration. Is that I like that someone like Sony is investing a ton of, same as like I don't like Facebook, like they should burn, but I also have really enjoyed the like massive R&D and mainstreaming of a like entry level headset that Meta / Facebook did with its acquisition of Oculus. And I also am glad that Sony is going to be putting in real money into, like, there's lots of really interesting things in VR and PC, but if you want like the spectacle and the budget, like a lot of that is lacking. At least relative to, you know, a God of War-ish or Horizon level game. And so I'm excited. It's like, well, they're not going to do this expensive headset if they're not going to put real muscle behind the games as well. But yeah, the lack of PC support, or maybe that'll get announced later. I really hope that comes, because, you know, this would be a really compelling purchase, despite I know it's expensive, and I'm sure that's slightly inflated by Sony's desire to charge as much as they can and call it inflation. But it's not fully unreasonable for like the going rate for something coming with two controllers and like as you said, Rob, the pixel density of the headset. It's by all, like everyone I know that's used this headset has been like, it rules.
Yeah.
Sony's done it again. They have engineered another. It looks like they've engineered a truly like excellent piece of hardware, and then they're pricing it accordingly. But at least you probably won't have any trouble buying this one. My guess is this one will be in stock. I just know what Sony's measure of success is for it. You know. So anyway, sorry, you were saying. Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of the thing is, I get like, here's another question. Is this basically being entirely run off like a PlayStation itself, or is this like does it have inboard processing that it's doing for these games? No, that's why it's down to one wire. So that one wire is it tapping into the PlayStation 5, which is exciting, you know, in theory is exciting, because it means it's going to get a chance to use all that hardware. I mean, you know, there's what's inside the Quest at the moment is you know, like a mobile chip. You know, it's capable, but it has its real limits. And then there's, you know, things like battery to be aware of. And so the notion of the PSVR being able to kind of just connect directly to the PS5 opens the door for some, you know, especially with those like really nice displays, like really cool, potentially cool looking experiences. I mean, yeah, there's not like a ton of reason for Sony to not have like to have it be wireless, because I just don't think they care about like a broader market. Right. They want you to be sticky to Sony, and like this is the wire is as much a unlocks the PS5 as a piece of hardware to leverage, as also it like tethers you to the ecosystem. And so I don't think they lose any of that if they were to add PC support, and maybe it's something they add, but they just sort of downplay, like they're not necessarily going out and waving a flag to be, but like
I think they would end up getting a lot of sales of people who don't even actually give a shit about owning a PS5.
I wonder if it's a thing where they can also turn an extremely blind eye to like a homebrew market that crops up around this thing as people figure out how to make it, turn it into a PC compatible.
It would also just be silly in the long term for their current strategy of releasing
There's
games.
some simpatico PC, yeah.
Right, releasing games exclusive on the PS5, PS4, and then roughly a year later having those games arrive on the PC. Like the VR market is the PC and then the Quest, and like those like markets in some ways overlap and in many ways don't. But that to not include that to tap into that market, maybe with their, it's very easy to imagine them frustrating a lot of people up front, and then at some point they're just pocketing this announcement for later when one of these games comes to Steam, and it's like, actually, we're also patching in, PC support where you're able to connect this. That's like very, very easy to imagine, and given the trend of the company, would be very odd to not do at one point or another.
I'm also curious, like, as I understand it, one of the big things that makes people react poorly to VR historically has been like things like image quality and refresh rate. And it seems like they've sort of pushed those stats pretty far in comparison to the rest of the market. And so I do wonder as well if there is still a bit of a bet being made here that fundamentally what is preventing adoption is not like that VR is just inherently faddish, but also just that the experience is not wowing people enough to like, there's still too much downside to a typical VR experience, and that maybe the PSVR 2 can overcome that. I'm really curious to see how this pans out. Certainly for a fool like me, I will just be jacked in front of my PlayStation, my little racing wheel out on its silly little metal frame.
Have you ever done VR racing before, Rob?
I don't think I've done VR racing. I did. Remember I had that. I was going to say it's a stupid little thing. Of course, it's a great little thing. The Track IR. The thing that has the little camera and like that shit alone was really cool. Like the ability to like look into a turn or like check your mirrors, like that stuff is awesome. The idea of like getting fully into VR and like having something where it's like
you can imagine GT7 having like a
with
really
those ridiculously
kick-ass,
like detailed cockpits.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could definitely imagine that being like a really good use of that. Yeah, I think they have not solved, but they've gotten a lot further in the makes people sick category. But fundamentally, I think there is a ceiling on VR that is incompatible with most people beyond it being like. It's why the Quest was really cool and very popular, was because for a couple $100, I can bring like this kick-ass little gadget to like the Christmas gathering that everyone's going to sit around, have drinks, and pass around. Like that's super appealing. But my understanding of the data on a lot of Quest stuff is like there is a very steep decline after a couple of months when the novelty wears off. Like it's not a sticky device. And I think the stickiness is most seen on the PC, where like people are playing like VR chat and things like that, where like it becomes part of their community. Like this is a way of interacting with worlds, and I don't trust Sony to build that, because like the communities are going to do that on their own. Look at what look what Meta's doing with Horizons. Like it looks like dog shit, because there's too many restrictions. So I think there's a real ceiling on VR. And I don't know that it's going to be some massive hit for Sony either. But as someone that likes VR and just wants it to continue, like essentially if there's enough baseline investment to get the quality to a certain place, well, then everyone can leave and it's fine. There'll be indie developers catering to the community that still likes this medium, and then they'll move on inevitably to AR, because that's where all this stuff is going in the next 5 to 10 years. But if like those will be different experiences, and so I'm at least excited that we've gotten to this point where I think it will just continue to be the kind of thing that like your tech gaming buddy says, "Do you want to try this cool shit thing in VR?" And you go, "Yeah." And then like half an hour later, you're like, "I'm good. Like don't need to come back to." It's kind of like seeing Avatar. It's like Do I remember anything about that movie? No. Did I kind of have a good time in the theater? Like a cool roller coaster? I sure did. Okay, I think I'm all right. Don't need to see Avatar again.
I had a very cool time in the theater watching that movie. That movie
Yes.
was like, this is all
Did you
right.
ever revisit? Did you ever rewatch it again? This is
no.
besides the cult. Like, is it you can't remember a character? Like, so this.
The thing is, I've actually never bought into that. I actually remember quite a bit about Avatar. If I'm being,
you don't
count.
You don't count. You remember everything. You have too big brain. Too big brain.
He does.
Too big brain.
He's too strong.
You were telling us that you're the guy in high school that watches the movie a quarter in and like, well, you guys want to know the twists? I haven't seen The Sixth Sense, but I have a sixth sense for where this movie is going.
Yeah,
we have to rewatch Avatar. I need a reason to do it.
We do.
God damn it.
Sorry, Kato. Eventually, it will be Patrick's turn, and we're just going.
Yeah, that's right. Patrick can do whatever the fuck he wants.
And I'll just scroll through some production designer that worked on whatever movie, and their sister worked on the first Avatar.
God.
Nailed it.
Yep.
Found a connection. 6 Degrees of Cameron.
So one of the news story that's sort of caught my eye today, and Ren, you mentioned you were writing up right now, is that Activision on a number of fronts is sort of continuing to fight a delaying action against unionization efforts. You want to catch us up on what's going on over there?
Yeah, of course. So basically, there was a successful vote to unionize QA workers at the Albany studio, which is teams working, QA workers working on Diablo. There are 2 teams of QA workers who basically grouped together, 15 working on Diablo 4 and 5 working on Diablo 2 Remastered. And basically, they effectively voted and successfully voted to unionize, at which point Activision Blizzard requested the votes to be impounded until a request for review is completed regarding the hearing that occurred previously. They have 3 main concerns. First, that they make the claim that the video games industry is so fundamentally different from any other form of production that the extant precedent established by the National Labor Review Board does not matter. Established precedent, video games are so different that established precedent should be thrown out because it's not. It's distinct from industrial factory production.
Do they like make? Are they more specific on what they mean by that, or is it just it's different?
Yes, they are specific. Basically, the argument that they make is that video games are a uniquely collaborative work environment, and so because video games are a uniquely collaborative work environment, basically every member of the development team across departments has the same interest in like the labor sense. So basically they're trying to argue that the interest group is not limited to QA workers and should in fact include everyone. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, hey, haven't entertainment unions existed for a really long time with a bunch of cross-disciplinary unions and unions that kind of are either micro units of specific laborers or broader coalitions? Isn't there precedent for this? Yes, there is. They're ignoring
we have them here at Vice.
Right.
I mean, there was some consolidation that happened on our most recent renegotiation, but like that is normal because different groups are going to have different specific sort of circumstances and demands that would actually, I don't know, dilute is the wrong word, but it makes it easier to negotiate based on the specific circumstances of your job, even if you all work for a news organization or work on a video game. And it's funny because that argument is just co-opting the language of pro-union talk to make it sound more reasonable to the average person that doesn't have the time to scratch beneath the surface. Shouldn't everyone be in the union? I mean, yes, but you're being disingenuous.
Right. So that is their first argument. Their second argument is that the QA workers themselves, because they are distributed technically across different departments, so for example, the art department, the engineering department, QA workers are working with all of these, right? QA workers do not have shared interest with one another. is one of the arguments that they're making, because they
did this with
technically
Raven. This was they made the exact same argument with Raven, in that, like, because right after Raven announced their QA team wanting to unionize, to formalize all that, they ended up shuffling them into a, I forget what the terminology is, but like scattering QA amongst other disciplines at the company, as opposed to being just their own unit. Right. And that is what was weird about it, was like similar disingenuous nature that has been happening in video games, where it has been discovered that yes, QA teams should be embedded in art, in design, in like programming, but that does not remove their like common interest. Exactly.
There was also a story that they used in the request for review, where they were like, actually, the other problem is that QA workers have I forget the specific legal term that they use, but basically they shift between departments frequently, and they are so integrated into every other aspect of the workflow that separating them would be a problem. And the example they give is a member of the QA team who was shifted to a UI designer role for a handful of weeks without any modification to their pay. So their example of the ways in which their QA teams are work across a variety of disciplines was an example of them asking someone to do something that was not their job for no additional money over what they were already being paid. And that is their example of how the QA team cannot be separated from everyone else. And then their third argument is that there was an impermissible digital picketing that happened at the hearing, because a group of spectators for the hearing showed up to the Zoom meeting with profile pictures that said ABK stop union busting. At which point during the hearing, Activision Blizzard was like, this is impermissible digital picketing. And the person in charge of the hearing went, shut the fuck up. If someone showed up wearing a shirt that said that, we would not kick them out. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And Activision Blizzard said, fine. And then they sent in this request for review. They were like, I think that was the wrong decision. And it was very mean. We were very hurt by all of this. And so these are the three arguments that they're making to justify having these votes impounded and potentially thrown out to then force a larger mixed unit election, because micro units are significantly more likely to unionize than larger mixed units. This was a union busting technique that was just recently used at the Amazon factory, the ALU union election that happened recently, which went from 400 voters, 400 basically electors, to 1,000. And when that jump happened, they were like, well, fuck. This has also been something that Starbucks has been accused of doing recently. When stores are beginning to unionize, they basically hire up rapidly to expand the voting body such that you have less chance of a unit forming.
Do you have a sense? My gut tells me, based on past experience here, is like this is all just posturing and trying to drag their feet. Is there an analysis that suggests this is likely to fail and it's just them doing the stuff that all companies are going to do if they don't immediately just roll over and recognize the union?
This is totally standard practice for like anti-union action. Like I was actually in contact with a professor who specializes in labor, and one of the things I was reading up on from something that he sent me was the Dwayne Morris legal firm has a article that's just like how to disrupt micro unions, just openly how to union bust online, and like they're just playing the playbook. They're just doing it. But the problem is that, to borrow a phrase from this professor, what they're doing is they're trying to win by losing, by just dragging the process out as much as possible, because companies can basically hold on and throw as much legal mire in front of organizers as they want, because they have the money to do it. Organizers do not. They do not have the money nor the time to be able to have a really long, drawn-out fight very frequently. And so, like, this is a delay tactic, but it is like a delay tactic that is in and of itself a union-busting attempt. Because, like, the more you delay, the more things destabilize.
So Are they also playing, like, does this stay within the NLRB, or is this now going to judges that they're asking to appeal the decision of the NLRB?
This is, I believe, let me just check my case, this case filing real quick, because I have a copy of it right here. Petitioner. No, so this is going to the NLRB. Okay. It's going directly to them, which is also part of why it's kind of a silly situation, because the NLRB currently is actually relatively pro-union. We are in a moderately pro-union phase of the National Labor Relations Board, and so basically, Activision Blizzard is the is sending this into the NLRB against the Communication Workers of America,
right?
And their attempts to unionize. So yeah.
Well, I mean, we will. We'll see how it goes. It does sort of seem like these appeals don't have a lot of merit. But yeah, as you say, like, part of it is just trying to hold on long enough for to make clear that unionization in other places will have a similarly long road ahead of it. Yeah. Like, this is what you're letting yourself in for. And two, like, I'm sure there's a lot of companies right now who are looking forward to a much friendlier regulatory environment moving forward.
Yeah. One other thing I forgot to mention. Another note on their argument is that they say it is too different for precedent to be used, right? They simultaneously make the argument that QA testers in other industries, specifically quality assurance workers in, for example, industrial factory production, are considered part of the union with other non-QA employees. And so they basically are simultaneously arguing antithetical points. And it is extremely funny to read the document and see those points contrasted with one another.
Also feels like
that feeling when you... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it also feels like a bit of an old playbook as well, right? Like, this was like the line of defense used by the tech industry in the 90s and early 2000s, which did rely a lot on, like, the incomprehension of regulatory bodies and judges and arbitrators to really, like, understand what was going on and what the merits of the arguments were. And I don't think that holds anymore. I think the mystique around like technology firms or technology adjacent firms has kind of dissipated as it has revealed itself to, the same dynamics exist that have existed elsewhere. I think 20 some years ago, I think you might have genuinely found someone who in good faith bought into the argument of, like, yeah, man, tech is so different from, like, factory work that we can't really apply those same standards. I think now you're less likely to find someone who's sort of bought into that sort of techno optimism at this point.
Yeah, and also, like, again, the entertainment industry is established. Like, practices within the entertainment industry are established, and the modes of production are similar. The notion that workers have different interests in other industries, and that workers across departments have all the same interests because they're all working on the same product is exceptionally silly and has been disproved time and time again in decision after decision.
The shit like that doesn't matter because, like, the advantage of having wildly different and varied unions also gives each individual component a lot of power. You will see this the scariest thing that happens to the entertainment industry once every 10 years is the threat of a writer's strike. Because it's so much harder to get a strike order with a broader group, but on an individual basis, this is why you cannot allow visual effects artists to unionize. They're more important than the writers at this point in terms of and that is not just for your typical Marvel film. Like, everything relies on visual effects, and so when you have individual groups, in many ways, that increases, like, the power of the broader base because things are so consolidated and precisely because they are so overlapped, when you pull out one peg, like, the whole fucking thing collapses. And so in theory, by having a varied amount of unions, you can actually strengthen the individual unions because each of you needs to be in a place where you feel like you are being compensated and respected appropriately, or else no one else can do their jobs.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I think there's kind of a few schools of thought about that, right? Because there's also been, I feel like this is still current, a broader recognition in the labor movement that what's called like wall-to-wall unions are also probably preferable as the way to go forward, but are also harder to create. Like our company, our like a larger bargaining unit was created out of sort of the knitting together of several smaller ones, but that took years to sort of unfold. But like it's the funny thing here is, yes, this is sort of a tripwire that Activision is trying to run out in front of QA workers unionizing. The funny thing is that there probably is I think there is a fair bit of evidence that it has been easier for companies to secure favorable terms dealing with a series of small unions who, like any one unit, can't bring business operations to a screeching halt necessarily, or could be easier to replace on a one-to-one basis. It's like, to a degree, this is an awful lot of hard fighting to prevent what would still probably be a like manageable union for Activision to deal with. And partly it is the objective here is largely about demonstrating the futility of unionization in general and keeping it from being a thing that sort of like moves like a wave through other parts of the company. But at the same time, there is a bit of I feel like over time knife juggling with this kind of rhetorical strategy. Because as time goes on, as opinion and view of unions shifts, I do think we may well be closing in on a day where if someone says to Activision, okay, we'll do a full like poll of workers at a studio, that may not be a foregone conclusion, how that plays out. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. Certainly, though it does seem like this is kind of a paying gasp.
Lawyers a lot of money to just drag out the inevitable, which that is like as Ren mentioned, that is a tactic in and of itself of just slowing things down, even if you know where the train is headed.
Well, and there's been some discussion, that's also been a thing that's been talked about a bit too. Like, as Ryan mentioned, there's the law firms that have union busting playbooks and bill themselves as specialists in it.
Don't even hide it. It's just, you could just go there as part of the feature
but also,
set.
They don't necessarily have that doesn't necessarily mean they have an amazing track record at dealing with it.
No, they're just companies desperate for someone to talk to. It's an industry.
And they bill a fortune for it.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing is like, when you see something like this playing out, there is also.
Can we get in on this? Like, Rob, you've negotiated. Like, can we start a quote union busting consulting firm and just pass on ineffective tactics?
I think we would need
that sound really good.
I think we would have to be a long con. We'd have to start seeding the ground right now with like fake identities.
Kato, redacted.
To go back through all the episodes and cut out every fuck.
What if we okay? I feel like we'd make so much money. We can hire other people to like be at the company, like, but we're just like the shadowy figures in the back. We're not actually in the face of it. We're not in the meeting. So, you know what I mean? We're just this.
We just have people who are basically like sock puppets going after these meetings. Like,
yes.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Like hire some extras to go out there and be like.
Yeah, we will hire union performers. Look, we respect SAG-AFTRA.
This is a little unconventional. We can't actually give you lunch on this meeting because we need to return the suit to Brooks Brothers, and we can't have any crumbs or stains on it. So, you're just gonna have to do without today. Patrick, there's one other thing, because this is on the backdrop of Microsoft's potential acquisition of Activision and things they're trying to do to allay fears around that. You want to catch us up on the positioning Microsoft is doing around the anti-competitive aspects of the merger?
Yeah, the long and short of it is it has kind of come down to Call of Duty, and it has kind of come down to increasingly the most effective regulatory arm in the world, which is Europe. You know, you're going to get USB-C on your iPhone because of them, and I still think this Activision Blizzard deal goes through, but where we started months ago was Microsoft would honor Sony's existing very lucrative, go watch any of the ads for Modern Warfare 2, a game that has been an enormous success in recent weeks, like huge. Like we sometimes talk about, oh, Call of Duty is kind of softened. That's true. Modern Warfare 2, not the case. Like right back to that game being as big as ever, or at least that particular installment. And Sony has marketing deals and branding deals that make a lot of money on, you know, DLC and things of that nature, and have an existing deal that was supposed to go on for several years. Microsoft started their position as we will honor that and in fact extend it. And then Sony's position became extend it more. And Microsoft was like, no, I mean, like, this is going to be 5 to 7 years. That's a lot of games. Even as Call of Duty apparently is shifting to a every other year cycle, which will in fact be fewer games, which maybe plays into some of Sony's thinking here. Is like, if you're not getting 6 games over 6 years, but 3 games over 6 years, that's potentially a loss of revenue. And now it has gotten to the point as the European regulatory bodies have continued to kind of turn the screws, even as much as they seem to be sort of just parroting a lot of Sony talking points. You can hold that position and also be like, look, the world should exist in a place where someone like Microsoft is getting the screws taken to them. Even if it does come across as parroting Sony's talking points, it's better for everyone involved that like this stuff happens more regularly. And with the position that Sony or Microsoft has now ended up in is Phil Spencer is saying some of this, and now there's been, you know, so Spencer was at a Wall Street Journal thing that a lot of actually this is from a YouTube channel. I don't know. They're not putting out statements. They're just like doing podcasts and interviews and using that to communicate with regulators. That must be part of it, clearly a deliberate strategy, but it's sort of odd to me. Anyway, Spencer said on the Same Brain YouTube channel that the full quote is, "We're not taking Call of Duty from PlayStation. That's not our intent. Our intent is not to do that, and as long as there's a PlayStation out there to ship to, our intent is to continue to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation, similar to what we've done with Minecraft since we've owned that. We've expanded the places where people can play Minecraft. We haven't reduced the places, and it's been good. It's been good for the Minecraft community, in my opinion. We want to do the same when we think of where Call of Duty can go over the years. Now, there's a lot of wiggle room there. Like, does that mean does that mean that they acquiesce to the demand that Call of Duty is not allowed to go on Game Pass? Are there restrictions on that where it's past games, but not like the current release? I think those are details that Sony will continue to demand, but it is certainly it may seem small, but it's rather large that one of the biggest things that Microsoft could acquire out of this deal, other than just studios that know how to publish a video game, which is Microsoft's continued weakness as a console manufacturer, pretty big weakness to have as somebody who sells a video game console. It would be to have Call of Duty as, if not in the short term, but in the long term, an exclusive IP. And even if they eventually get there in, say, 10 years through whatever mechanisms, this quote seems to rest at a place where for a lot of years going forward, Call of Duty is going to be treated like Minecraft, and maybe Sony loses a marketing deal or something like that. I don't know, but I think they actually probably keep that shit because it sounds like what Europe is saying is leave Call of Duty how it is, or the rest doesn't walk through the door. And I think Microsoft probably eventually begrudgingly agrees to that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of cool. That's how regulation, like, you know, put Sony feelings aside, this is how this shit should work to some degree. Like,
to some extent, I mean, we have the long track record of people on the eve of a merger saying a lot of things that are not necessarily.
Well, that's right. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, what does that mean now versus 10 years from now? Right. Like, I don't think it's going to be a flip where it's like.
No, they won't do the like Dish Network.
Right. We're not raising
thing.
prices.
Yeah.
Okay. Merger goes through. We're raising prices.
But you know, and the funny thing is, of course, like I obviously Call of Duty is huge. It's a massive franchise. It would be helpful to Microsoft to have that as an exclusive. On the other hand, like, is, by it being kind of everywhere, it helps it remain a huge franchise.
And they take Sony's cut, right? Like, you know, that like the money that was going to Activision goes to Microsoft. So from Microsoft's perspective, you could view this as, this may seem like it's really tense and like a big deal, but like in the big picture, they're squabbling over potentially billions, but like something that's actually not that huge of a deal. It just seems like it because we're watching it play out in public.
Well, especially because like in some ways, if you look at acquisitions like this as fundamentally like products of long-term thinking, it's not necessarily going to be like, now we're going to lock up Call of Duty and make everyone buy an Xbox and subscribe to Game Pass for access to Call of Duty. That may not be it, right? I mean, the model may more be like things like, what are the next Starfields that are coming down the pipe, right? Things like the things that will become
Evil Within 3. Where's that? You know, the games people want.
the games that people demand.
Rob, if you played Evil Within 2, you would fucking love it.
No, I played a bunch of it.
Did you? Okay, all right.
I played a bunch of it.
That came up at some point. Great
I just got pulled away from it, and now when I go back, I suck at it. And so I'm like, because the game's like, hey, dude, you got to get really good at this like crossbow thing. And I'm like, yes, I remember how to use this crossbow thing with all the crowd control and AoE and stun effects. So there's that. But man, what a fucking game. But yeah, I just, in some ways, I think Call of Duty is the easiest thing for Microsoft to be reassuring about, because in some ways it's the crown jewel.
I guess there's also like a really cynical way of looking at it, which is that, boy, look at, Microsoft could have looked at this deal, identified Call of Duty was going to be the sticking point because Sony made it a sticking point. And the reason Microsoft is dragging this out like themselves might be, look at these concessions we made. Concessions we already built into probably having to do in the deal, but then does the PR war of making it seem like it's good guy Microsoft. You know, like, hey, we're going to recognize the union at Activision. Mm-hmm. Hey, look what we did to Sony. We're respecting Call of Duty and the existing relationships with those fans and that hardware. And there's a real good chance, I think, they talked about all of that as possibilities. Yeah. And this is just the branch they went down and went, yep, we knew this anyway, and also makes us look good in the eyes of regulators.
I guess the funny thing, though, is just because of the way Activision was run for years and years, it is hard to say what else of value you get out of Activision that is not already an existing franchise that like Microsoft could do something with, because Activision became so hostile to new IP, right? And sort of like rolling out new franchises, and like adopted this sort of like strip mining model in some ways.
And then we'll just randomly sign Sekiro from software for reasons that don't make a ton of sense.
Right. So yeah, like I like, it seems this is the position you'd expect to see given the regulatory hurdles to this deal. But yeah, I do kind of feel like these are sort of the concessions you'd expect to see. And they are not necessarily the ones, like these would not be the real objectives of a merger like this over the long haul. Before we take a break, I just wanted to mention, speaking of monopolies, things monopolizing my time, Marvel Snap has invaded my home. And
how did this happen? What is the moment that you went to the Google Play Store? What tipped you over?
Like I was downloading while you were discussing it.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, but there's downloading as a bit for the podcast, and then there's sitting down to play it.
No,
I need to know.
So the thing is, it's football season. There's also been some boring ass F1 races lately. Baseball can be a game of contrasts with lots of downtime. In between things happening. So there's been a lot of opportunity for like, I got 10, 15 minutes. I don't want to like take my attention fully off of something, but I can sort of engage with something else.
Rob, are you saying a no-hitter in the World Series is neat in theory, but increasingly tedious to watch it actually play out?
Oh my God. A 4-pitcher no-hitter where all the scoring happens just on one inning. It was a bad fucking way to spend the night. I'm so angry.
I turned it off.
I'm so angry I watched that game, but it did give me time to build a new deck in Marble Snap. And I think this is the thing. This is actually, so there's kind of two things. One, MK predictably went fully down the rabbit hole. Like, I think by last Friday, she was like, yeah, I'm silver something, wild number. And I was like, haven't you just had the game a day? And she's like, I am with hyperfixation. I was like, I do. I do know how that is. But so the thing that I think is kind of genius about this is, they give you that starter deck that with a few little tweaks, you can get really far with the starter cards as a decent playbook. And it was just as it was starting to get a little bit rote, they do that challenge where it's like, hey, you should win a match with Spectrum in your desk, in your deck. And Spectrum is a late game card. I think she's cost 6, power 5, but her big thing is she buffs all cards that have ongoing effects on them. And immediately I'm like, oh, well, wait, I haven't really thought about too much about the on-reveal versus ongoing distinction. It hasn't come up that much. But now that Spectrum is in play, it matters a little bit. So I'm going to lean into a deck that has a lot of cards with ongoing effects so that when Spectrum pops up later, it's going to be like, bam, in your face.
Yes.
But before too long, they're like, hey, have you tried Odin? Who, wherever Odin is placed, causes all on-reveal effects to fire again. And you start thinking about, man, if you had a bunch of powerful cards that have on-reveal effects, and then Odin shows up and they all fire again, shit gets pretty fucked up for the other guy real fast. And then, this was me last night, where I was like, I've got enough cards now that interact with the other player's deck that I kind of want to try that now. And so I went in and I was like, I'm going to have a deck that's going to let me steal their cards and give them shitty cards and all this sort of goodness. And I think that's kind of this is why I am so hooked on this is because every time it's starting to get stale, it has, by that point, seeded enough cards into my collection that it's like, there's a new deck archetype you could try and refine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's like a whole new game. And God help me, I love it. And the other thing, I even love how bullshit this game is. That's part of it. Because this game is bullshit.
Yeah.
The zones that are just like, oh, the third zone revealed, and it means fuck you. You can't win. And if I were rational, if I'd respected myself more, I would see things like that and be like, you know what? The hell with Marble Snap. I've got better things to do than have a game just completely tilted out of hand by a random zone effect. But instead I'm like,
there is no zone that says you can't win. What is there something specific that really particularly screwed you over?
Okay. Yes, I'm trying. Okay. I have to think about this for one moment because there was a zone where it was hilariously impossible to win the moment it fired. It pulled it. I want to say
all Rob Zachney's lose 15 energy. Just in a straight out.
There's a couple of really bad ones, especially if you've accidentally played a card. In particular, there's one of them that's you can only have one card in this zone. And if you accidentally play a low level card into that zone before it reveals, then it reveals. You have a one-off stuck in there, and they can just drop whatever they want on their other side and win that easy.
This is why I've started seeding the third zone fast, so that if that reveal happens, it's like, well, I've already got 3 cards in there, so
right. And then they just stay. Then they can just stay. Yeah. This is one of the reasons I play Watu a lot, which his whole thing is just if he's in your hand, you see all the zones. You see all the zones before they reveal. Yeah. It's very strong. It's too strong. And even though his energy sucks, I don't know. I just having that information feels very, very useful. Have you?
Oh, I know what screwed me. I know what screwed me. Sorry, I just remembered it.
What was it?
It pulled Professor X immediately out of my hand and played it into a zone before I had any chance to seed it.
Oh no!
And then just shut it down. I want to say there might have been one other effect too.
Yeah.
Like it felt like there was a chain reaction that happened, but it was like immediately Professor X, who locks down a zone, nothing can enter or leave the zone, was played immediately, which meant that now I was playing on a 2-zone board effectively, and had just lost the 3rd zone straight up because of the way this deal had happened. And the other 2 were in such a position that like one of them was going to be really hard to salvage. So it was stuff like that where it was like, okay, my entire deck is built around sort of like having some late game decisions, and here it was just like all your late game stuff is now taken.
Okay, but here's a question. Okay, obviously, like there are so many card games, right?
Yeah,
so many good ones to play. Is there what if this game is a little like Mario Kart? Like, it's okay if there's a blue shell, right? Like, you've got other options, right? You want to go play the exquisitely balanced. You want to go play the thing that is like really reflects all the time you spent on your deck and you really thought about your moves. But then sometimes just goes, you know what? Actually, fuck you. I'm just saying, like, as a gameplay conceit, especially something pushing for the mainstream, is like, it just, I can understand the appeal of having something that occasionally just steps in and goes, actually, here's a bit of a randomizer effect that can kind of screw over somebody for whatever reason, just to introduce a bit of chaos.
Yes,
and to be fair, even that zone, even that situation that Rob found himself in, it's a double layer of RNG. It's first getting that zone to pop. Second, which card is going to pull from your hand?
Right.
Because any other card, you probably would have been fine, right? Like, so that's even a smaller chance upon a smaller chance. First off, like it's like
a tiny blue shell.
Yeah, the blue shell is small, and it doesn't happen super often. And sometimes it happens to your enemy, and you're like, "That's great."
Yes,
but also,
which is you in second place on Mario Kart, when seeing a blue shell take that fucker out.
Exactly. And the other thing is the matches are lightning fast, right?
Yes.
It is such a small time investment to get into one of these that if I lose one off of like a bad double stacking of RNG, I'm like, all right, on to the next one. Like, I didn't snap. As long as you're not snapping, I've learned the error of my ways. I'm no longer snapping on turn 1, where I used to just throw that shit out immediately.
Howard, you've gained fear.
Yes, and now instead of going like jumping between silver 37 and gold 44, like I'm slowly on the uptick in gold instead of like going back and forth, swinging wildly in one, like vibrating in a quantum position around gold.
But I think, Patrick, you do have something there as well, which the construction of this game, it does remind me a little bit of, there's that piece, I think in the Atlantic, like last week, about the sort of money-ballification of everything is just like ruining the world. And the argument effectively being that like a lot of things, when subjected to really close, like quantitative analysis scrutiny, it does turn out there is an optimal way to do something. And that also tends to mean that there's a generic way to do something, that like all the interesting variation disappears because it is not optimal and it just gets sort of streamlined away. And, obviously you got baseball in the brain because I'm watching the World Series, but this is something that, baseball now is fighting against, which is, the hyper investment in pitching rosters and then the defensive shifts that came into the game several years ago are slowly being kind of ruled out, because it turns out that while you can optimize baseball in that way, it becomes a way worse game when you do. And I do think like Marvel Snap, to some extent, by its very design, does have that friction where it's like interesting things are going to happen here. Like this
same
is
with like referees is like, yes. Do you want the rules to be applied how they were written? I mean, yes, but no.
What if nah?
Yeah, like you just want that, like sometimes like shit happens effect. And I think Marvel Snap like provides that in spades, and I think it goes to like the speed of the games, the small size of the deck. So you have just enough. There's just enough size to the deck that like you do have the satisfaction of constructing a deck and thinking about how the synergies will unfold across the game, but it is not so huge that you are having to juggle a really like complicated and intricate optimization problem, because the game doesn't unfold long enough to bring all those into play anyway. So you've got to deal with the variation of what are you going to draw across those 6 turns, maybe 7, and what
maybe 4.
What are the curveballs? Right. What are the curveballs going to be that the board throws at you? And between those two things, it does mean this is a game where like a lot of different things happen despite you playing the same deck over and over again. And defeat doesn't sting that much. Yeah, kind of.
A deck of just 12 cards, right? Which is like in any other card based game that's like, that's tiny, that's nothing.
Yeah.
You've got something there that's probably super consistent. But they've obviously balanced the game around this, and because of the turn structure and the zone structure, it's like very few games play out exactly the same. Right. There's maybe a goal of things that you're trying to hit with your combos, but you're not going to be able to hit them in the same order every single time. You have to be able to play your hand well, even if some of your cards came out in the wrong order, right? I'm playing a movement deck right now, which is very interesting.
Right now, I've only really got Nightcrawler who has movement abilities, so I've seen cards allude to movement abilities.
Yeah, there's a few. I think. So this I forget what the cutoffs are, but once you hit a certain collection point, you're starting to collect what is known as Pool 2, which is like a second like release of cards from, because this has been in beta for much longer than I realized. And so there's been like 3 different pools of cards that have updated the game over time. And so in Pool 2, there's a bunch of movement cards, and I've started unlocking them. Like one of them is fucking what's his name? Kraven from Spider-Man, I guess. I consider Kraven a Spider-Man character because of the cartoon.
It is, yes.
But
no, Kraven is a Spider-Man.
Is he in the comics? Because I feel like I've never seen him in the comics.
Yes.
Okay.
No, that is a typical Spider-Man. He hunts down Spider-Man. That's like the whole.
That's the whole thing. Yeah.
The whole thing.
Don't they all do that?
They all kind of
yeah, but he's got a big
him.
yeah.
But he's like good at it.
Yeah,
he's got a whole thing.
They're turning that into a movie with what's his face?
Who? Whomst? Who's gonna be Kraven?
With Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Who?
Yeah, hold on. What do I know him from?
The classic soldier that was from Godzilla.
Oh, of course. Who could forget?
Bryan Cranston's son from
the guy who was married to Elizabeth Olsen
2014
in that
Godzilla
movie. Yeah, he's like, I have to get to my family.
Kick-Ass? Oh wait, actually, he's in Anna Karenina. I think I might have. Who is he in that?
He's okay.
The Train.
He's okay.
The Train.
It gets weird there in the last act.
Yeah.
No, so like, yeah, the way these like new archetypes are sort of drip fed in there is really cool.
Yeah.
Like right now, the fact I've got a deck that draws a lot from the opponent's deck, it is so satisfying when I drop Dinosaurus or whatever the hell his name is, but like, he gets +2 for every card in your hand,
right?
And like,
you've got extras from their deck.
So many cards with this deck. Everything's working well. That's like, oh, you got the Hulk. That's cute. Bam! My dinosaur just fucking killed him. It's great. But yeah, so I am totally hooked. What a game. What a absolute.
What's your hold on? Let's I want to know what's your collection level. I want to see what pool of cards are you in? How far have you gotten?
Oh, not that far. Gosh, well, it's gonna take a moment to load up, but it's like I think low silver or something.
Oh, not even your ranked mode, like the little green number where it's like
little green number
at the top.
83.
That is pretty. I think you're still in pool 1. I believe it's like at 100 you hit pool 2, and then pool 3 is like 200 or whatever. But there's so much variance, and like
so much awaits.
I had to. Have you bought the battle pass? Did you?
This is so I'm not entirely clear. Like, basically, I just want I want my Spider-Mans if I get the battle pass, right? That's
I mean, that's one thing. Is like Spider-Man's cool. That's a good card. Miles Morales Spider-Man. It becomes a one cost if something else has moved. So it's actually really great in my movement deck. He's a one cost that has 5 energy, which is awesome.
So wait, you get the battle pass for free, but then there's the buy premium, right? That's the deal?
The premium. There's like most battle passes got a free track and a premium track.
Oh, but okay, yeah. So I've got to get the I see
the premium track has all the the Spider-Mans, and also the big thing is the energy. The energy with which you upgrade cards, which is how you get more collection level, which is how you get more new cards, right? I definitely hit a wall around 150, something like that, where like I didn't have any energy left to upgrade things, and I had to buy into the battle pass to get more energy so that I can.
You just got to.
I'm at level 276 now.
Oh, that puts my 83 in context. Yeah. But honestly, I feel like that's about where I should be relative to you. So I'm actually kind of reassured by that.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
But yeah, I have not been able to be like, I'm gonna put $10 into this thing, because I know once I do that, I'll be regularly getting hit up for $10 by this game. like it's the thing, right? Once I do that, where it's like, yes, I will buy this battle pass. Then I'm on the treadmill. On the other hand, it's a good treadmill, and it is a godsend during like shitty football games or dull innings of baseball. Yeah. It's true. Or like when you're just standing there like waiting for something to finish in the oven.
I got
curious, nothing to do for 5 minutes.
I am curious how the drip feed stalls out for you if you don't put in battle pass money.
Yeah.
Because
maybe I'll be stingy to see how far I can push that. But speaking of all that commerce, all that value, we're gonna pause here for some ads. Back after this. Tell me of Kratos and Richard Schiff as Mighty Odin.
Haven't seen I haven't seen the update from the last time we talked about God of War, which is me having played 11 hours more of it. Haven't seen a lot of them.
They're really hiding that guy, huh?
Well, this game is extremely long. I mean, God of War 2018 was long as well. That was a game that took me. That was when we were doing more proper reviews. I think I took an entire week off of work to like sprint through that game and write a review for it. So it was like playing still podcasting, so I wasn't getting like full days of play, and I had kids. So, but like long games, like that game was like 25-ish, 30 hours long. My understanding is God of War Ragnarok is longer than that, more in the 30 to 40 hour range. So I've played, if we pluck 40 out of a hat, I've played about a fourth of it, which feels about right. Like I always like it in a big game where especially when it's not out and you can't consult a YouTube video or some sort of guide. You're looking for anything to like cling on to give you a sense of like the progress you're making, and collectibles are like the best way to do that. So I did this in the first game when I was reviewing it, and I did it in this one as I was trying to get a sense of like, where am I at in the story? And so you need to find a collectible that is not exclusive to the region you're in, but is like game spanning. And one of those that is in both games are called Odin's Ravens, which are just these like translucent ravens that kind of swoop around. And then the puzzle is trying to get the exact angle and timing on your axe so that you think you have the angle, and then you have to release it like 2 or 3 seconds before and hope that it connects. It's a really fun little puzzle scattered throughout the game. And there are like 48 of those. And I think as of when I stopped playing this morning, I had like 10 or 11. So I was like, okay, I've probably missed 5 or 6. Like that puts me about a third or the fourth way through. But God of War, a game, light spoilers. Well, I guess explicit spoilers for sort of like the end of that game. But that, God of War, the 2018 game is, ends with the discovery that Kratos' son Atreus is at least prophesized to be Loki, and that they have a very important role to play in the events to come, which, as you might surmise from the title of the game, Ragnarok, is the event of Ragnarok, essentially the end of all things, like a war, a cataclysmic event that will take everything out, and it's preceded by a great winter that sort of makes things pretty miserable before the actual event of Ragnarok occurs, and basically everyone dies. And so your Kratos' son Atreus doesn't, is trying to grapple with what does it mean to be part of a prophecy? What does that like mean to like essentially know some version of your fate? What does it mean to be alive and discover you're a god? And then like Ragnarok, in broad strokes, is like Atreus figuring out maybe there's more going on here than folks, the prophecy tells, or maybe that prophecies or your interpretation of a prophecy can be slightly misleading, or who tells it to you can be important. The first game was like broadly thematically about try to forget most of the things that Kratos did in those original games. Just forget the specifics. Like, those are problematic. Let's just say he was a really violent person who now has a son, his wife has died, and he's trying to figure out how to be a father. Like, you have to do... The game doesn't really try to do it. That original game sort of like expects from you as a player to like, look, you got to grant us some latitude here. We're going to use that broad foundation of this character, but we really kind of need you to forget, as I mentioned when we talked about in a preview form, like that he was grinding women up into as part of a puzzle. Like, just think of him as a really violent bad guy. And that original game starts with him, murdering his family, trying to absolve his sins by going after the gods. And so this one's like God of War sets up, like, he's a parent. He is now a single parent. He's not necessarily a reluctant parent in so much as he does not know what it means to be a parent. Like, his wife did a lot of that, and he was a support character in that struggle. But suddenly with a young child, I forget what age Atreus is in the original game, but like under 10 years old, he's young. And that is Atreus is present, but is a side character for a story about, much like a Last of Us or a lot of games of a certain era of the last 10 years, is like, what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to have a child? And struggling to accept those responsibilities. And Ragnarok, putting aside all the gods fighting each other and that stuff, like, broadly is about two things. One, it gives Atreus a real perspective. Like, this is about a teenager, and all of the angst that goes with that. And so, unlike the first game, which has Atreus just as a bit player, and they're important, but like, there's kind of on the side, you're spamming square for them to shoot some arrows, and they talk in cutscenes. Like, in this new one, you have sequences where you actually, play as Atreus. You get a chance to venture off as them, and long, like, introspective moments where this character gets to kind of come into their own. And you have Kratos, who accepts that he is a parent, at this point in this story, wants to be a good parent, doesn't really know what that means, but he definitely loves his son, and is not necessarily aware of the limitations of parenting when a kid gets old enough to start forging their own identity, where, you spend, let's say, essentially 10 years, like the first 10 years of a kid's life, mostly being their identity for them and protecting them. And then suddenly they're old enough to say, like, I don't want or need this anymore. And so you have Kratos struggling with that, and you have a child struggling with realizing the limitations of their father's like own parenting skills and what that will or will not allow them to do. And I think all this shit like works pretty well. Like, I'm a fucking mark for it, right? Like, I'm not gonna pretend I'm not. Like the story about, I have daughters, but like the themes here in this game and the previous game are like universal in that regard, about like the struggles of what it means to parent, what are your responsibilities as a parent, and like they're pretty like broad. Like, there's not like new ideas here necessarily, but like the stakes feel real, the characters, like the performances are excellent, And like the other big theme of Ragnarok is specifically it uses prophecy and destiny to essentially explore the idea that is related to parenting of like, what does it mean for parents to like set you on a path to quote unquote succeed? And then what does it mean when you like decide you don't, like, I don't want to, maybe I don't want to do that. And then as a parent, what does it mean to, you know, essentially guide them, like trying to put guardrails up while also allowing or not knowing how to allow children to kind of establish their own identity.
I'm curious when I hear that, like, you know, are we able to get a little more specific about like where the what Atreus is shrinking from here, or is that more like, is that something we like you have to play the game to really get at?
No, I mean, like essentially, you know, Atreus / Loki, or maybe Loki. Again, these are like vague prophecies. It's sort of like not even specific, you know, specifically at the start of the game. Like, what does all this mean? Who are these characters and what role do they play? But is, you know, Kratos is like, look, Ragnarok's coming. Let's just hide out. And I don't know, hopefully the storm passes us. And Atreus feels a weight has put on them, but it wants to rise to the occasion. Kratos is a character who at this point has gone through, I don't know, probably decades of like war and violence, and comes out the end of it going, not that this violence isn't the answer, but, well, I mean, and this, you know, this is the contradiction of all the games of this type, is like violence is still is the primary answer. I don't want to go to war, but man, I really need to chop up these elves while I get there in like the most grotesque, cutscene-y ways. I definitely need a scene where like to kill this lizard, we can't just kill it. Like, I need to take my blades of chaos, like pin it to the ground, and then tell my son to take their knife and cut open its throat in the most detailed way imaginable. So like, similar to the way you sort of have to put out your mind like Kratos's quote like character arc from those original games pre the 2018 game, like that is just sort of what this game is. Like, it has that violent spectacle, and either you like, we're gonna read a bunch of essays, and I read a bunch of them about the 2018 game. They're like, that doesn't work, and I agree. Like, I'm with you. Like, and yet if you sort of accept it for what it is and then proceed from there, it can work. You know, if you can do that, then a lot of the rest of what the game is doing can work for you. But so, you know, I think broadly here, like a lot of what ends up working for me is like actually just giving Atreus a voice, like they're a character, like you really there's a lot of less sympathy and empathy for what they're going to, especially if you've, you know, depending on the relationships you've had with your parents. Obviously, it doesn't involve necessarily killing gods, but like a lot of what this is such a talky game. Like the original game was such a talky game. Like, it just never shut the fuck up. And that can be a negative. In God of War, I thought it was a real positive. Like the writing is really, really sharp, and funny and interesting. It carries over the other really sharp thing from the original game, which is that how often do you play a game and you purposely walk a character slower because you're just not sure when that dialogue isn't going to cut off? And they had such a smart solution for that in the original God of War, which was that like a lot of times what happens is like you get into these big spaces, and then you have like these different spots you can explore where there are puzzles and combat scenarios and yada, yada, yada. And then like the characters start talking. There's banter on your way there. And in most games, you do the awkward thing of like bringing your boat up to the dock, and it's like, cool, time to wait until this wraps up because I don't want to, there's no way to like pull up an options menu with the dialogue I've missed. And what happens here is like as soon as you hit like circle the dock, the characters go, oh, you know what, we'll pick that up later. And they do. And it's not just that they pick it up, but it's like, right, where were we? Okay, we were talking about Thor, and then like they go back into the story, and all that stuff carries over here. Like all the performances are extremely strong in this one, and everyone is constantly talking, but in a way that ends up filling the void of like a really, especially the opening hours of this game are just slow. Like you're just waiting for the sequel to start. And I have just gotten about 10 hours in where I feel like, all right, I guess the title card should drop. I think that already happened, but like it just takes an extremely long time, not to just get going from a storytelling perspective, but sort of like introduce enough of like what's different about this. There's not a lot that's different. Like if you didn't like God of War, you're not gonna like God of War Ragnarok. It is a like deeply like picks up from the ending of the last one, starts from there, tells the story that you're pretty sure they're gonna tell, and mechanically is not hugely different as well. There are flourishes. There are, without getting into like spoilers, there are meaningfully different ways that you play the game at times that are interesting, that are more than just Kratos getting a different weapon type, that sort of changes their approach to a combat scenario, and that stuff is appreciated. They also have the chains early on as opposed to discovering it a decent way through the game, which means they've also added like this really big vertical element. But it's a long game, and it's so hard to tell because I played 10 hours really, really quickly in the last couple of days, so I could speak to the game more than just the opening hours. And understand, when you review games, pacing is so difficult to grasp. Like it is. I played like the opening 10 hours and went, it took about 10 hours for this game to like start going. And how much of that is me wanting the game to get going versus the game treating itself as a television show. And it's like, look, let's like lay the groundwork, get you back into things. Like you're going to be here a while. And I can absolutely see other people looking at that and go like, that sounds awesome. Like I would love to just get like a slow dip back into this world before things really take off. And that's just the nature of like reviewing these games. I mean, credit to Sony. They are consistently one of the companies that gives you shit really early. Like people had a full 2+ weeks with Ragnarok, and they consistently do that with like all of their games. Like I think the last couple of years they have always delivered their stuff early. Fortunately, I don't have to review it, but that is one, like even as the couple of tweets I wrote this morning about it, where I was like, I'm not sure about the pacing. I could absolutely see that coming across differently to folks that play this game slowly over the course of a month. Instead of cramming like homework for a podcast. That said, I'm pretty sure, and I've talked to some people that worked on the first game that have since played this game, and like I think the idea this has too much is probably true. And yet what is here is really good, and it's the kind of world that people don't like to leave, and so I doubt that'll be a negative for most folks. I just haven't gotten far enough to really get a sense of how all the story stuff lands, but yeah.
Well, good thing you're not playing anything else that's maybe overly long or excessively sprawling.
Yeah, really
Patrick.
good. It just well, look, I wrote, this will be in the newsletter that people get on Friday. I was like, So I came up with a piece of content to let me play games for work that I don't have time for. I mean, on Tuesday, or Wednesday, I played 7 hours of Cyberpunk 2077 on stream.
Patrick.
Picked up, yes.
God of War. Did you say that you hadn't hit a title card in God of War as well?
Oh, I was just joking.
Okay.
I don't even know if it has a title card.
Sure.
This is like a game with a single, like both these games do the single cutscene.
I was about to say, so you haven't hit it in either of these games yet.
No, I don't think it has one. No, yeah, and I know that I was like desperately close to the one in Cyberpunk, but like, yeah, my Wednesday was playing Cyberpunk on stream for 7 hours, and then picking up my kids, having dinner, putting my kids to bed, and then playing 4 hours of God of Ragnarok. Like, that's too many games. That's bad. Don't do it. Don't recommend it. But both games are pretty good, so I guess you could do worse. Also, I hope you really like puzzles, because that's what Ragnarok is, just puzzle. But it's I really like the puzzles. Like, it never gets old to throw that fucking axe. Like, it's like whoever came up with that original mechanic, 100 hours later,
throw axe good.
Is that how you're solving the puzzles?
I mean, a lot of the game is
surprising
angles.
Number of axe throwing puzzles.
Angles, like
Okay.
it is setting up angles. It is manipulating weights and distance between things. It's I know it sounds goofy, but it's awesome. I mean, like, seriously, there's like almost nothing like nailing one of these Odin's ravens with like what feels like a trick shot on the golf course, where you are like, I'm throwing it and I'm waiting 5 seconds to see if it lands. And when it does, after 15 minutes of trying, is one of a glorious feeling.
Honestly, should we take a little dip into the question bucket here at this point before the end, or anything else people want to hit?
There is. I do have to read this. I do have to read a question very quickly. So we've had an ongoing. I think this has always happened in episodes that Rob is not here. About the Whack Pack. And this person from South Korea that wrote in and called us the Whack Packers, and we thought it was just this goofy thing. Couldn't figure out what was going on. Then we've had several people write in and be like, "Hey, this is a deeply problematic Howard Stern reference." And now we have an update from Landon, who is the original person who wrote in about the Whack Pack. Hey, Waypoint crew. As the one who originally sent in the Whack Packers email, I listened to some confusion as someone else sent in about the Howard Stern connection on the recent pod. Well, I'm obviously aware of who Stern is. I've never listened to the show and really only know of him due to his pop culture reputation and random interview clips on YouTube. I decided to do some research, and yeah, I can see how maybe that raised some eyebrows, since it seems like there's a lot of problematic stuff about the Whack Pack. The secret origin of the term is that I was part of a creative writing group in college, and one of the people in it called us the Whack Packers, and just assumed it was a name he made up since it sounded like made-up nonsense. I stole the term and applied it to any group I happened to be a part of or traveling with. For example, I ran a book club while in Korea that I named the Wackest Whack Packer Book Club in all of Yosu. I've never had anyone or mention or ask about Stern's Whack Pack when using the term, nor have I Googled it, because I assumed it was just a made-up nonsense term. Clearly no one on the podcast would know any of this, and I just thought it'd be a fun name you'd get a laugh out of. Not sure if you want to bother reporting this on air. I do. I wanted to clarify and reveal this crucial lore, as I didn't want anyone thinking it was ill intent. That was broad. That was my presumption too, Landon. Anyway, all this, they did also have a question. I wanted to ask about books, specifically about Stephen King books. Is it surprising to anyone there has been basically no real video game adaptations of King's works? There are a handful in the 80s and late 90s, but they're all attached to a film adaptation. It's crazy to me that we didn't at least get some random Resident Evil clone based on one of King's books in the PS2 era, or that Telltale didn't license out something when they're releasing 15 games at a time. I know not all of his work easily adapts to a video game format, but I can easily imagine a video game of Running Man where you have to survive different levels with a boss hunter at the end of each one, a Resident Evil-esque version of The Mist where you're trying to find a way out of a town overrun by monsters, or an RPG series based around the Dark Tower books and all the shenanigans within those. Am I often thinking that it's weird that these two parts of entertainment and pop culture have almost never intersected? Could Stephen King and video games be the chocolate and peanut butter being combined into a Reese's cup? Or am I crazy and do you think this is more of combining peanuts and chewing gum situation? Ew. And regardless of what you think, why didn't you know companies ever tried to do something considering how much success King's adaptations have had in film and television? Sincerely, Landon.
I feel like there has to be I feel like it'd be a good fit for an adventure game, like an early 90s adventure game or like a mid 90s adventure game of Stephen King's work. That seems right. Right?
I mean, you've got
collaborated on
Remedy out there doing
right. I was skipping past the fact that the Stephen King game exists. It's called Alan Wake, and its sequel, Alan Wake American Nightmare, and then that sequel, Alan Wake 2.
I don't have a good answer for this. I have thought about this question as well. If you do a Google search of Stephen King adaptations, I think The Mist has a text adventure. There actually is a Sierra style adventure game for the Dark Half. And King collaborated on a seventh guest style FMV thing that does not look very good. I think part of it might be that King's explosive name popularity, alongside things like It in recent years. I just think they don't do licensed games anymore. That's just not a thing that video game companies do. Why that didn't happen during the PS2 era? The Mist does make sense as something that would have been a PS2. They did The Thing. That game was from the 80s. But I don't know. I agree. The Dark Tower would be an exceptional. I think part of it might be, which is also the problem with adapting King to film, is that so much of King's work, why it is special, is his writing. And it's not that the worlds aren't interesting or the characters aren't interesting, but when you read a King book, so much of it is specifically in his writing, which is why so much of it gets lost in the adaptations, because what's special is intrinsic to his writing style. And that's just very difficult to adapt to screen that feels kingy. And I would imagine that would be similar for a video game as well. Anyway, thanks for the Origins Dorian backpack.
I was
sorry
also,
if I ruined it. Sorry if learning the Howard Stern stuff ruined it for you as well.
Yeah, things are never quite simple with the Howard Stern show, though, and history. No. It's a land of contrasts. Mm-hmm. Though it was somebody who wrote in the full roster of the Whack Pack. Regular. There's some names.
No, hit me with some.
Nope.
No.
We're not doing
Google
that.
them later.
I will paste it for you. But I guess this is a little. Unfortunately, Ren does not have this touchstone. Probably for the best, but anyone that's listening to this that is aware of 90s shock jock, you can just take a guess at like what sort of stereotypes would. Okay, here we go. I'm pasting this for Ren. And I lost the listing, but you'll get enough of them. Look at the one all the way at the last one there. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Pretty standard for edgelord 90s shock jock humor. What's our mainstay? Rob Man-Cow, right?
Yeah. Chicago's answer to that. I'm also flashing back now to Peter Jennings getting pranked by Howard Stern caller and Al Michaels calling in to be like, yo, that's a Howard Stern bit you're doing. The 90s were a weird time. And yeah, the subculture built up around Stern is weird. But let's get into some emails here. First one comes from David from Indianapolis. Dear Waypoint Radio, I have a hypothetical video game fantasy scenario for you. Each of you has a magic wand that can magically revive a single dead multiplayer game from the past and make it both playable and popular for the next 5 years. This isn't a cursed wish. In the spirit of fun, whichever game you pick can also have any or all of the following perks. Runs flawlessly on modern gaming systems, bug fixes and ongoing content updates, 0 toxic players, a stable mix of players joining and taking breaks so that you can always play with folks at your skill level. After the 5-year renaissance ends, your chosen game dies a second time. The servers go down, all the discs become unreadable, and all the other players go their separate ways. Which game would you pick and why? Or why not, if none?
The Matrix Online, because I missed it the first time around. I'm really sad that I missed it the first time around.
That's a good pick.
Especially the updated content. They like the way that they ran that game, kind of like with the community influencing its story. That seems like it'd be really fun to be a part of live.
Is it Titanfall, Ren?
I said Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2. That's without.
Well, it still runs, but is it still
runs.
Broken? I don't know where the state of Titanfall 2 is at this point.
I'm not sure, but also like that it runs and it has a healthy and active community. Like it has a healthy community are two very different propositions.
You just gotta get on the North Star servers. Gotta do a little bit of modding. There's a community out there for you, Ren. Oh, I'll send you some links.
My understanding was there were cheat exploits in that game that kind of overran it too, right? That was an issue.
Yes. Wait, God, what is this? What links you gonna get?
We'll talk after. Yeah,
we're solving problems here, Patrick. What about you?
All the games that I played when I was younger, mostly. Like I played like Quake and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of like one that like died that I would have wanted to. I never played Tribes 2. That was always the one that people talked about.
That's kind of the one I was thinking of.
I know that's like the quintessential, but I remember people loved that game, and I just never got around to playing either of them. But I know that Tribes 2 like is seen with like such reverence for like being an exceptional multiplayer game.
I might see if I can bring Myth back, but the only issue, the Bungie game, which had really cool multiplayer. The only thing I remember, though, like not digging as much about the multiplayer is that it used a points buy system with all the units in the game, not just the player controlled ones, but the game was fundamentally balanced around a single player campaign. And when you sort of like the optimal builds that cropped up in multiplayer, I remember not being particularly fun. Like, not that the meta never shifted, but I just remember like it was not awesome to basically. I feel like at a certain point you needed to run like Mercridia in Myth 2 because they were such an overpowered unit that like you could not compete without them in your lineup. And maybe that eventually got patched out, but the thing is that is a unit that like they're like this werewolf race and everything, and they just sort of like bull rush everything in their path and one hit kill pretty much anything in their path, which is terrifying in a single player context where it's like, holy shit, can you drop these things fast enough before they like pulverize your lines? In a multiplayer match, it just didn't feel like Myth doing that. But I would still be curious to like see what a thriving Myth competitive community might be like. So that would probably be my answer.
Just bring back Quake 3 test, right? You know, you only need one map, Rob. Just like, that's all you needed was just this one little demo that John Carmack put on a plan file.
We have another good question here from Michael from Australia. I have a problem with games where I never finish them. Oh yeah, I know this problem. Not that I get bored, just that I get to almost the end and think that I'll push through the last bit in a single session at some point in the future. Open world games have made this worse by explicitly pointing out the point of no return. That's not the problem. The problem is that I'm running out of disk space because I still think to myself, oh, better leave that there. I'm still playing it. This includes Mass Effect 3, left unplayed since 2 months after the game was released.
Oh my God.
What games are the team still deluding themselves that they're still playing?
Doesn't exist. Built
so
different.
So many.
I've still got those Thief Gold saves rattling around my Dropbox.
Those don't count. You said that. What's a recent one?
What's still loaded up here that I should really just fucking uninstall?
Let me select ready to play games on Steam. Let's go to the oldest one I have in here.
I'm still working through Final Fantasy 14.
No, you're not.
You're not. Yeah, what? Cruelty Squad.
We had this conversation. Cruelty Squad was on my top 10. I played half a level and I was good. I loved it. I adored it. I didn't need to see any more.
Wow.
Did I finally delete it? Oh, I did. Phew.
Did I beat Inscription? I might not have beaten Inscription.
You should beat Inscription.
But
again, time moves on.
Yeah. Elden Ring.
That DLC is very fun.
Yeah, you just couldn't beat that one boss. It was too bad.
Damn.
Oh my God, bro.
Other people did. Other people beat it.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. Road Warden.
Yeah. That's recent though.
Yeah, fair. I mean, the bad ones are on my Switch.
So, Iron Harvest, an RTS I liked quite a bit, has a really good campaign, and I was like, this campaign's really getting good. But also, it was turning into a really hard single player RTS campaign with a lot of like trial and error, and like, what's the trick to this level? And so I'm still like, I'll finish that soon. I'm not finishing that soon because now I'm shitty at the game. Like, I load back into those levels and it's like it expects you to be like have been on a skill curve since the start of the game. And now I'm like, I don't remember what these fucking little mechs do.
Remember our High Fleet save, Rob?
Oh man, High Fleet.
Remember High Fleet? That was a
we have to go back.
we have to go back. Oh, never gonna finish that.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. Like Patrick has that makeup where Patrick can just look honestly at things and be like, I am done with this. I'm putting it down.
Well, I frequently have the opposite problem. I mean, so I will play things for the explicit, like I categorize them like I am playing this because I want something to talk about on the podcast or I think it's interesting. Mm-hmm. But then when I play something that I like, I will reprioritize it to finish it, right? Like I went back and did that with, like, I had God of War and I went back and spent 2 nights finishing Scorn. And I also need to go back and finish. I did that with Roller Drome. And then the game I need to go back and do that for is A Plague Tale.
Yeah.
Although I might just do that at Christmas when I have a bunch of extra time at this point. But yeah, I try to keep the pool small so that I can actually get to the ends of things. But I also have a hang up about finishing things. Like this extends to television, you know, less so now with kids and less free time. I'm just more picky. But it used to be that, yeah, this is how you end up watching like 7 seasons of Prison Break. What else are they going to do? Or what else am I going to do?
Once you've started, you've got to break all those prisons.
I got to know what happens to Michael Schofield.
Yeah. Ren, did you find anything particularly heinous on your Switch?
On my Switch, it's actually so I got a new Switch like a year ago, but I've got some Shin Megami Tensei 5. Still haven't finished it. I wrote a review of that game. Let's see, Shadowrun Hong Kong.
We didn't like that game, right?
No. Well, no.
I liked SMT5.
Oh, that's the other one. That's the one from earlier this year.
Yeah, Soul Hackers.
Okay.
I also
Soul
didn't.
Hackers. Soul Hackers is the one you didn't like.
Yeah, Salt and Sanctuary, game that came out in 2016, I believe.
Okay, here's the question: how many? Okay, so I think part of what is different
Rain
about
World.
this question is it can't be a game you dipped in and left, right? Like playing an hour doesn't count.
What's
I'm
the,
not,
I think
I'm
you
not
were
doing
pretty
that.
stuck in.
I need to. What is the? Can you? Because the Switch tells us this.
Yeah.
What are the hour counts on some of these?
Let me see software information.
Like Shin Megami Tensei.
SMT5? Oh, that's like 40 hours.
Wow,
like 30-ish, I think.
So you're like a third through the game.
No, I was like half. Let's see. Salt and Sanctuary, like 15, 20.
Okay,
Shadowrun
that's
Hong
decent.
Kong, like 10 or 12. Rain World, like 6 or 7. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, that was like 20, I think. Let's see. Yeah, I got what I needed. Pokemon Legends Arceus. I put like 30 into that, I think.
But is the way that you
Wait,
bop?
did you not finish at 30?
No.
Well, how long is that? That's like a 60-hour game, isn't it?
Let's see what my hour count is.
Like, you know, as observing, like Kato occasionally plays story-driven games, but largely plays infinitely repeatable games, and then avoids this trap, in which there is no end. You can't even feel bad about not finishing. There's no finishing Slay the Spire. Rob, unable to choose, constantly investing in a game from 7 years ago because they can't figure out which game to play from a week ago that they got code for. I'm curious, Ren, like, where does your bouncing come from? Like, what is it just, you just like tasting, like explicitly, I just enjoy playing something up to a point and moving on, or is it like an inability to focus thing? I'm just curious, like, I could see both of those being, or maybe they work in concert, I suppose.
I mean, I think a lot of it is, I will hyperfixate, and once the dopamine exhaust, and once the dopamine stops coming, I will probably just go somewhere else for a little bit. Like, for example, I played all of Shadowrun Dragonfall in like 3 days while visiting my girlfriend. Or, you know, SMT5, I like put a ton of time into in a big burst, and then it's hard to go back to stuff that I've put like 30 hours into, even though I remember all of it, because like, if I leave a piece of media, I can reopen it to exactly where I was and remember what I was doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and like all the mechanics. That is easy for me. The problem is that I just don't often get the desire to, because it's like, oh, there's cool, new, interesting work in front of me that I can go check out. And so like, I could either dip back in this game that I really found interesting, but did not feel like it was building to something that I was like really excited about, then like, that is my personal, like, the cause of my bouncing around. But like, I don't know. I also like, I do like dipping into things to figure out what their core mechanics are, getting the vibe, and then bouncing. But there are a couple of games that like, no, I do put a ton of time into and then just never finish. Monster Hunter Rise. I still haven't beaten that expansion. I put 90 hours into that game. No, you haven't beaten the expansion yet. And then I just get distracted and I move on, and there's other interesting stuff to play. And so I play the other interesting stuff that's there.
Yet also there's that steady accretion of, I'll bet that game has a fun denouement. I should find out at some point. I too had a Mass Effect 3 save. Like the only reason that wasn't on my list is because I lost it when I did a PC rebuild. But like
You too?
that was on there for years, where I was like 2015. I'm like, oof, things are getting pretty intense here. I'm gonna like put a pin in this, and I'll deal with this Reaper invasion later. And I never did.
The other thing I should note, Patrick, I'll just Google the ending of something. I don't care. What's going to stop me from Googling an ending and just being like, what does this go narratively? Do I want to see that? Is this interesting enough to see through? Do I want to see like the plot beats that I'm looking at here? No?
I can't do it. Can't do it.
Could not
never
be
do
different.
because people describe things poorly too.
No, but no commentary. You can just see the ending. You can just like skip around and be like, "Yep."
Watching something is wildly different than
context.
actually doing it, right?
No, I know the context. I put like 30 hours into the video game. I got plenty of fucking context.
Couldn't be me.
I frequently skim ahead in the book and be like, "Okay, seriously, where's this going?"
No.
What?
No.
How do you even choose what page? At least in the video game, it's like, okay, roughly I can pick an hour before the end of this video playthrough. What are you just picking, like page 452?
No, I'll just be like, okay, this plot, like, there's like 3 plots here. One of them I care about. 2 I'm kind of like lukewarm on. Where's this one plot headed though? Skip. Da, 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 da. Oh, wow.
But how are you doing this? How are you figuring out where to even look?
Thumbing forward.
Just kind of scanning. Just kind of.
I'll check. I'll do a vibe check.
What?
Well, hold on. So
I'll crack open a book and do a vibe check. Yeah, this is normal.
also,
you know what? Let's not. Let's be how words work.
Patrick, I will also say, like, I am very, like, it's funny. I struggle to, like, necessarily always maintain focus on, like, a given page I'm reading. I'm very good at skimming and, like, pulling out, like, just, like, large, like, snippets that'll basically allow me to trace what's happening in a book as I page forward. The other weird thing is, the shape and layout of a page will imprint very strongly, and I can find like pages in like specific pages in books years later because I remember what the page looked like, and I will skim through the copy until I see that shape of like the text blocks, and then I'll be like, "Yep, it was here."
This is the Rob Zacny Renata Price Venn diagram. Is what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Listen, when I'm like really, when I want to read and I don't have like the it's not giving me enough dopamine, sometimes I'll just skim a page and be like, okay, cool, I have the basic information. Let me go back and find the good words. Like that's the problem, is that like if a book is not really beautifully written, it is really hard for it to keep my attention, even if it's good. Like plenty of good books really struggle to keep my attention, and so sometimes I'll just go like,
We are cursed with shitty gifts.
Yeah.
But you know what's not a shitty gift? Waypoint Plus.
Oh, wow.
It enables all the fun streams we've been doing lately. Check it out at waypointplus.com. It enables Daddy's Day Off.
I should clarify, because
Monday.
enough people asked, like, why are you doing this on the Waypoint account when you're taking a day off? I was like, no, that's just the shitty name, the shitty fun name I came up for it. I am being paid.
Well, you're taking a day off from being a dad. That's the day off.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that is the day off. It is not me taking a vacation day and then choosing. Look, if I was going to do that, I'd be on my own personal Twitch channel and I'd be monetizing that myself. No, that is just the name.
And obviously, we've got a new episode of My Turn that just went up on the premium feed. We did White House Down. And I think you'll be surprised at the reactions we had to it. I'm not saying we sort of rediscovered a lost modern masterpiece. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but you'll have to listen to the episode and decide for yourself. Maybe check out the movie and see whether you agree with our takes. That sounds good. Or you just want more Waypoint, and you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. That gives you access to our premium feed. And of course, you are helping support Waypoint and everything else we do here. And if you want to take that extra step, you can go to waypointgeneralstore.com and buy some of our fine Waypoint merch, including a new poster and t-shirt design that we just had go up for the 6th anniversary of Waypoint. That is very, very cool. And Kato, can you describe it a little bit? Like I forget the artist's name is the main thing here, but it's very cool art.
Jimmy Geigerich has made a metal t-shirt poster style illustration of 4 ghoulies, 4 monsters on a monster couch playing video games.
Ghoulies is a specific thing. Kato is a series of films. Ghoulies go to college, I believe, is the third one.
You know what I mean. 4 little monsters, 4 little, and it's a great t-shirt, a great illustration. You can go to jgillustration.com to see more of Jimmy Geigerich's work. He did the illustration for us. And you can also check out his other t-shirts, those other metal style t-shirts at pizzapartyprinting.com.
Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. If you want to...
Kyle thought I was lying. No, Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies go to college, out of the bowl, and totally out of control.
Amazing.
I thought the Ghoulies might have been a different group of people that called into Stern, really. And it's like, well, you don't want to talk too much about the Ghoulies, though, because of, things that came out later. Standards changed.
Did the Ghoulies come from the toilet? What?
All right, that's it. We're calling time on this week.
Thanks,
we'll talk to you again next week. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home.
So see here on the cover of Ghoulies 2, they'll get you in the end again. I do believe Ghoulies preys upon the fear of sitting down in the toilet and the thing grabbing.
I don't want to look at these little guys.
Number one,
Kato, you can just let us know when that folder's up.
I'm leaving. Bye. I'm hitting exit on my recording. I'm hitting stop.
Wow, my turn.
Ghoulies.
Take your turn.
To Ghoulies.
You've got to take your turn into the Ghoulies.
God damn it.
Welcome to the Ghoul Zone.
Jesus Christ.